I would highly recommend it though. It was the winner of the nonfiction prize for the Women's Prize this year. They have a nonfiction category now. Hair in my face. I wonder if that shows on the camera. Probably. I don't know. I have some things in my face. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Welcome to another video. I am here today to talk about it's a bit sad, but apparently at least the last iteration that is hosted by Olive, who's the creator of Nonfiction November. You can find her, if you don't already watch her channel, at a book Olive on YouTube. She has hosted this event for many, 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 many moons. So I don't know whether to feel sad about the fact that this is the last one that Olive is going to be hosting, or happy in the sense that I think if you watch her video, you do get the sense that she has achieved what she had set out to achieve, which was to get more people reading nonfiction than they would normally read by creating this event. And as many things with Booktube, I think probably Nonfiction November has taken hold in such a way that it is going to be around for quite some time. That said, Olive always gives us a few words to help guide us make choices for prompts. And I'm not sure how that's going to work moving forward. So the 4-word prompts for this year are join, code, path, and shot. So I have pulled from my shelves some books that I've tried to fit into those prompts that I've been meaning to read for some time. Am I going to get to all of these? Probably not, but I'm going to talk through them as options for Nonfiction November. I have recently read a few nonfiction books. I wouldn't say that nonfiction is something that I turn to as often as I turn to fiction, but I have lately been wanting to read more nonfiction. Since I participated in Nonfiction November last year when I read Say Nothing and just kind of fell in love with nonfiction because of this book. I also went down a bit of a rabbit hole about the Troubles and that time, and I'm still really interested in that period and in Ireland in general. So it stayed with me. I also joined a nonfiction book club. I've been participating in it somewhat sparsely because I just haven't been as interested in the books that they've been choosing. And it's a kind of book club where you can register to attend. And so you have flexibility in whether you participate regularly or not. I did read Naomi Klein's Doppelganger earlier in the summer, and I haven't talked about it on my channel because it was packed with so full of so many different ideas that I still I'm still informing my thoughts about what do I want to say about this book. I would highly recommend it though. It won the Women's Prize for Nonfiction this past year. The Women's Prize has introduced a nonfiction category. That would be a great place to start if you're looking for a nonfiction book to pick up for this month's event. I will be doing a wrap up of books that I've read. I don't think I've done a wrap up in a while. I will be, one is coming soon, like a wrap up or a recent reads. I recently read Why Sinead O'Connor Matters, and I actually went to an event where the author, Alyson McCabe, she's a journalist, was interviewed. And yet this book was very compelling. It had a lot of information about Sinead O'Connor's life that I didn't know. I know that Sinead O'Connor has her own memoir, which I'm sort of debating whether I want to read or not, or feel like I need to read or not. I feel like I got so much of her story out of this book. And Alyson McCabe is a fan, so she writes in a way that really criticizes the industry and also the media and society, and how really criticizes how Sinead O'Connor was treated and compares the treatment of Sinead O'Connor to other artists at the time, particularly male artists, and really looks closely at the injustices that were faced by Sinead O'Connor. It was a good read. I think this is a whole series of books about why various different artists matter. So if music isn't of interest to you, this might be something to look into, this series. This is published by the University of Texas Press. I'm not sure if that's true for all of them. I also have read Monsters, which I had been really excited to read and really looking forward to read, and I found it was very interesting. I kind of picked it up and put it down and dipped into it and dipped out of it. It's that kind of a book. It's compiled like a series of different essays. That could be a great one to pick up for this month as well if you haven't read it yet. It really explores fandom, particularly fandom of problematic artists or problematic people or problematic celebrities, and helps us to think about the conflict and the contradictions inherent in loving a person's art, even though the person is really a horrendous, horrible person. So that gave you a lot to think about. I will talk about it more in an upcoming video when I discuss books that I've read, but it's another suggestion that I would give for Nonfiction November. I know that Olive's goal really was to just have people read at least one nonfiction book in the month of November. I definitely think I'll be reading at least one. I tend to veer towards memoirs, but I have, as I said, been thinking more about other nonfiction books, especially after having read Say Nothing. Olive very rightly reminds us that the best way to get into nonfiction reading is to follow topics that interest you. You are not going to enjoy the nonfiction reading experience if it's not on a topic that is interesting to you. So it has to pique your curiosity in some way. So the books that I have here are all books that I purchased because they looked interesting to me. And I'm going to talk about how they fit into the different prompts as best I can. And yeah, maybe it'll give you some inspiration of something to pick up for Nonfiction November. So I'm going to start off with Join. So Join, I guess, could be interpreted very, very broadly. To me, I think Join, to me, it's about thinking about joining as an ally, or not joining a movement, but joining in terms of having understanding of other people's point of view, and joining in terms of a kind of solidarity through reading. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to take that point of view, but to open myself up to different points of view on different topics. So I think I've interpreted join as being somewhat political or somewhat activist. So the first book that I had on my shelves that really fit with this word to me is Everybody by Olivia Liang. And I've had this book on my shelf for quite some time, and I just haven't gotten to it. And I know she has a new book out, and I've heard really excellent things about this. I just, not being a nonfiction reader, I just didn't have a chance to get to it. It's about a book about freedom, and it's about how to resist oppression. So women, people of color, and joining just the title alone, Everybody. It's this idea of joining, and solidarity is, I think, enveloped in the ideas that are incorporated in this book. It's anchored in the notion of bodily autonomy, but I think she also is talking about freedom of a people, of a person, freedom from oppression, and it fits with the prompt of joining for me. So in the same vein, I was pretty disturbed this summer when the riots broke out in the UK after a stabbing at a children's event for, I think it was a Taylor Swift inspired children's event, and the riots that broke out across the UK that were very racist had me really disturbed. And so at that point, I was looking for books that would help me find my way through being white and being an ally. And the book that I ended up ordering is What White People Can Do Next. I had heard many booktubers talking about this book, I think last year or the year before, and I just missed the opportunity to pick it up and read it. by Emma Dabiri. And I think that I will get to this one. It's quite thin, and I think it'll be very impactful. And it fits with the prompt of joining in terms of trying to understand your role as a white person in a world that is deeply, deeply racist, and how to effectively support the equal rights of every person, regardless of skin color. So I thought that this would be really helpful because I'm sure I'm sure I have many blind spots, and it would be very helpful for me to educate myself, or to be educated in this case by this author, a higher priority for me because it's meaningful in that way. I also had on my, and I haven't kept up with the Booktube Spin that's hosted by uh, Sarah, I think, and Jill, the book bully. I haven't done a good job of, I'm hoping the mic is picking this up. Like, the mic is all the way down there. I can try to put it on my, I hope the mic has been picking this up. We'll put it on my lapel. Okay, I put the mic on my lapel. It was sitting close to me. Hopefully the mic picked up everything and I don't have to re-record the first part. So I was saying I haven't been as good about keeping up with the Booktube Spin. I think one of the issues that I have is that the spin happens on the first day of the month, and usually I've already picked out my TBR and I'm filming before the first of the month. And the spin is not made for us booktubers, it's made for the audience of the hosts on their channel. So I'm not going to make a big fuss about it. But one of the reasons why I haven't been able to sort of keep up is that it doesn't get incorporated into my choices because anyway, one of the books that I had picked out in the 12 books of the year for the TBR Spin, that is a nonfiction book that fits with this concept of joining in an understanding of another people's perspective, particularly people who have been oppressed or still continue to be oppressed, is Unreconciled by Wente. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. About family truth and Indigenous resistance. Again, this is one I've been really keen to get to because of how meaningful I think it will be to me living in Canada and grappling with the social inequity that continues to plague Canada when it comes to Indigenous people. Not very long ago here in Quebec, there was a horrible, 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 horrible story about a woman who was mistreated in the hospital system. So it was 3 or 4 years ago that Joyce Echaquan's death shocked many people here in Quebec. Due to neglect and mistreatment in a Quebec hospital. She had recorded her experience before she died, and that information was released to the public, and it was horrifying. So, of course, we have the past to contend with and the residential school system, and much of that has become more and more public, probably not as much as should, and the idea of reconciliation is kind of superficial, I think, in terms of the way that it's been treated. And I just think that there's probably a lot to dig into and to think about in terms of the concept of reconciliation, and can we even achieve that. This is about Jesse's experience as the child of an American father and an Anishinaabe mother. He grew up in Toronto with frequent visits to the reserve where his maternal relatives lived. And by exploring his family's history, including his grandmother's experience in residential school, and citing his own frequent racial profiling by police who'd stop him on the streets, Wente unpacks the discrepancies between his personal identity and how non-Indigenous people view him. He argues in his book that reconciliation is a flawed concept. This is what interests me. Peace between First Nations and the estate of Canada can't be recovered through reconciliation because no such relationship ever existed. So I think this will be really good. One of my areas of interest and one of my areas of concern as a person living in Canada. Join. Okay, so I've a couple of other interpretations of join. The two other interpretations that I have of join have to do with the next two books. The first was a gift from a friend last year, and I haven't come around to reading it. It's been recommended to me several different times by the audience of this channel, and I really do want to read it. So maybe this month is the month that I'm going to get to Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Again, I have a tendency to mispronounce names. If I'm mispronouncing anything, I apologize. This is about indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. This could probably qualify for the shot prompt as well, because when Olive was talking about the shot prompt on her channel, she was talking about the idea of medicine. But I just thought the word braiding, because the word braiding has the notion of joining the pieces of material together in a braid, that it fit very well with the prompt. And I've been wanting to get to this for quite some time. I've heard wonderful, wonderful things about it. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a botanist of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, and she embraces the notion that plants and animals are our oldest teachers. In Braiding the Sweetgrass, she brings these lenses of knowledge together to show that the awakening of a wider ecological consciousness requires the acknowledgement and celebration of our reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. I think it's very timely. I'm annoyed with myself that I haven't read it yet. And I'm hoping that I can get to it, if not this month, then very soon. Hopefully this year. Again, these are books that will be on my radar for some time until I get to them, but I will eventually get to them. So the next book is a set of essays, and Olive had suggested that the idea of the prompt join could be applied to a set of essays because of the way that they are joined together in a book of essays. The book of essays that I'm interested in reading at the moment is These Precious Days by Ann Patchett. I've long been a fan of Ann Patchett's. I didn't love Tom Lake as much as everybody else did, but I've loved her other books so much. I think my favorite is Commonwealth, but ask me on a different day and it might be a different book. This interested me because I believe she writes about her experience writing. It says in the front pocket, Patchett connects life and art as she illuminates what matters most, infused with the author's grace, wit, and warmth. The pieces in These Precious Days resonate deep in the soul and demonstrate why Ann Patchett is one of the most celebrated writers of our time. I just feel like this could be a good one to dip in and out of, particularly leading up to the holiday season. This just has a cozy feel to it. It gives me the sense of coziness, and I think I will really enjoy dipping in and out of this one. Have a few more books to talk about. There is one out of the library which I will definitely have to read or return, so maybe I'll talk about that one next. This could qualify for two of the different prompts, I think. This is the one that I've taken out of the library. I think it could qualify for shot because of the topic. The book is Cue the Sun by Emily Nussbaum. This is not her first book. I've heard other people talk about her other book, but she is writing about reality TV. It's a genre that I appreciate and would love to read a bit of the history of and a bit of the background of. I think that's what she does in this, because the byline is the invention of reality TV. So how did reality TV come about, and like the history of reality TV and its origins. And I'm really excited to read this. I have a friend who read this and said it was really good, and I've heard really good things about her. So that, I think I'm gonna definitely try to read before I have to return it to the library, or I might just renew it 8 times until I get it read, which is another thing that I do. I also heard a trick where you can return the book, take it out again. If nobody wants it, you can literally keep your book out for months and months and months. So that would be one idea for shot. Another idea for shot in this sort of a similar vein, as in take your shot, is the book Superfan by Jen Sookfong Lee. Jen Sookfong Lee, I believe, was one of the judges or the chair I can't recall exactly, but I think for the Carol Shields Prize. So that's how she came on my radar, because sometimes when I'm looking at prizes, I do look up the judges and I look up their backgrounds and I become interested in them as authors. And also MJ, I forget if her handle's in Canada or MJ in Canada. I think that's her handle. A regular commenter on my channel said that this was really good, and I take the recommendations of my viewers to heart. I just think that this could be a really fun one if I'm in the mood to pick it up. How Pop Culture Broke My Heart. I think it fits with Shot, because as a super fan, aren't you always kind of taking your shot at maybe someday getting the attention of that celebrity or that entertainer or that artist that you are enamored of? She talks a lot, though, I think, in this book about some of the impacts of celebrity on culture and what it does to fans. I'm interested in the idea of super fandom because I'm super interested in the phenomenon of the Swifties and Taylor Swift and that whole world building that Taylor Swift has been able to do. And I think that this might be an interesting place to start thinking about some of those concepts that I'm interested in. Again, with nonfiction, you have to go with what you're interested in. Otherwise, you will probably find the book to be boring because it's usually factual, it's usually researched, it's usually, you know, it's not going to have the same kind of storytelling. Some do. Like, I will say that Patchett Radden Keefe is an excellent storyteller. Some of the books do have great storytelling, but I think it's fair when you're reading a nonfiction book to expect there to be less of an element of storytelling in terms of plot, etc. So another idea for Shot is, of course, which I alluded to when I talked about Braiding the Sweetgrass, is of course the idea of the medical industry establishment, the medicine, the healthcare industry, the healthcare system. I hate to call it the healthcare industry, but for sure this book would approach it that way. And that is Patchett Radden Keefe's other book, which I haven't read, Empire of Pain. I have read Dopesick and talked about it in a video. I read it for this nonfiction book club that I joined. So I already know quite a bit on the topic of the opioid crisis in the Sackler family. But because Radden Keefe is such a great storyteller, I think that this could be a good one for me as well, because I already know that I really enjoy his writing and I know it will be really well researched. I think it might be quite infuriating to read this, so I'm not sure if I'm going to pick it up. But it's been on my shelf for a while and I've been meaning to get to it, and I do want to get to it eventually. And if that's something that interests you, I can highly, highly recommend this author in terms of how compelling he is able to tell the story and stay true to the facts. That's my pitch. So the other two prompts, I did search for other books. I think Path is probably the easiest prompt because you can look at memoirs and make it fit the prompt of Path in the sense that you're following the path of someone's life. So I have 3 memoirs that I wanted to talk about that I'm interested in and one I've already started reading. So I'll start with the one that I've already started reading. I was in the spooky vibes. I am a huge fan of this author and I'm interested in her as a person. The biography of Shirley Jackson by Ruth Franklin, but it's written with the approach of dissecting her place in a literary canon or putting her in her rightful place in a literary canon where she was never included. So I thought that that would be quite interesting. I'm a big fan of Shirley Jackson's, despite only having read one of her books, which is The Haunting of Hill House. So I need to read some more Shirley Jackson. I might read her short stories in tandem. I've already started reading this and I'm already gripped. She had a fascinating life in the sense that she was the mother of 4 children. And she was, although she was wealthy and her husband was quite established in the literature community at Bennington College in Vermont, she was still straddling this existence as a homemaker and the kind of experience that women had in the 1940s leading to the 1950s into the early 1960s is so specific. So to be a writer at that time, to be a successful writer at that time, of course she was privileged due to her wealth and due to her marriage. Her husband was an editor, I believe, at the New Yorker, and several of her stories were published through the New Yorker, so she had this connection. So much of what she wrote about is a representation of this experience of women at that time, but in the form of horror stories or haunted. Her books are mostly haunted house stories, except for The Lottery and short stories, but at least The Haunting of Hill House and We Have Always Lived in the Castle are both like haunted house stories. So anyway, I don't want to go on too much about this, but I am very interested in this. I'm very interested in her life. I think it's going to be a bit depressing, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how this author argues for her place in the literary canon. The other two memoirs that I have, one is a memoir of Alan Cumming, who I adore and have revived my adoration for by watching Traitors. Even though I think Traitors is kind of a bad show, it's mildly entertaining, but the most entertaining part of Traitors is Alan Cumming. And so I picked up his memoir, Baggage Tales from a Fully Packed Life. And I think it'll be fascinating. He's such a fascinating guy, and I'm sure he's seen a lot. And I think it would be fun to read about his life and how he got where he got and some insights into his person. I'm really looking forward to this as an option. I have been long wanting to read the memoir How to Say Babylon by Safia Sinclair. This was longlisted in the nonfiction category for the Women's Prize this year. It's been on my radar since last year at this time when it was out in hardback. I picked it up in paperback when I was in the UK. You can watch my UK vlog where I found this book, and I still have yet to get to it. So that is annoying me, and I would like to read this one by the end of the year. The memoir of a woman growing up with a fairly strict Rastafari father and just her experiences growing up in that environment. And yeah, I've heard nothing but really good things about it, and I'm very excited to read it. This could also fit into the final prompt, which is code, because How to Say Babylon feels like there's some kind of code that is going to be revealed in this memoir of how to say Babylon. That's just me stretching the prompt, I think, but it could fit in the code prompt as well. And then the last book that I picked one other one for the code prompt. It's not a technology book. I did read Doppelganger earlier, and I think that would have fit with the code prompts because it talks about the duplication of the self in social media and in the world of technology. But a book that I've had on my shelf for quite some time, and an author who I haven't read yet, who's a nonfiction writer who I would really like to read, is Rebecca Solnit. And I've had Orwell's Roses on my shelf for quite a while. It's a person that interests me. She's an author that interests me. And here she's using Orwell's garden, the roses and the way that he tends his garden, to explore his life, particularly the overlooked portions of his life, or the hidden portions of his life, the secret parts of the code, you could say. It says Solnit's account of this overlooked aspect of Orwell's life, his gardening passion, journeys through his writing and his actions, from going deep into the coal mines of England and fighting in the Spanish Civil War to his critique of Stalin. Her celebrated ability to draw unexpected connections, see, codes, unexpected connections. Readers encounter photographer Tina Modati's roses and her politics, Orwell's slave-owning ancestors in Jamaica, and the brutal rose industry in Colombia that supplies the American market. So yeah, I think this is going to be really good as well. And I don't know how I'm going to choose which books to read for Nonfiction November. There are just too many wonderful books to choose from. So I hope I've given you some ideas. Love the idea of increasing the amount of nonfiction I read. It's something that I've been deliberately trying to do over the last year. I am considering making a nonfiction TBR for next year because I have that many books that I would like to get to. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all so much for watching. A very special thank you to Olive for creating NonFiction November and for all of the fantastic years of hosting, many of which I missed because I wasn't on Booktube, but the more recent ones that I've been involved in, you are so appreciated. Yeah, that's it. Thanks everyone for watching. Those of you that stayed till the end, leave me a rose in the comment section below. Bye for now. For her place in the literary canon next to, she's going to argue with Poe, Hawthorne, and James, so that Shirley Jackson should belong in that great tradition, or that